Imagine nonprofit work transformed by purpose-built tools. That would mean less guessing and more connecting, less admin and more impact, less stuck and more go. With the giving platform built for purpose, you don't have to imagine. Bloomerang can help you raise more funds, retain more donors, save more time, and grow stronger relationships with your supporters so you can spend time on what matters most, your mission. Want to see how over 20,000 nonprofits are using Bloomerang to raise, retain, and recruit more supporters? Well, take a free on-demand tour of the giving platform today. Go to jcsocialmarketing.com/Bloomerang. That's jcsocialmarketing.com/BLOOMERANG. Okay, on to the show. Hello, and welcome to Nonprofit Nation. I'm your host, Julia Campbell, and I'm going to sit down with nonprofit industry experts, fundraisers, marketers, and everyone in between to get real and discuss what it takes to build that movement that you've been dreaming of. I created the Nonprofit Nation podcast to share practical wisdom and strategies to help you confidently find your voice, definitively grow your audience, and effectively build your movement. If you're a nonprofit newbie or an experienced professional who's looking to get more visibility, reach more people, and create even more impact, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello. Hi, everyone. This is Nonprofit Nation. I'm Julia Campbell, thrilled to be with you today, wherever you are listening. Today, we have a new topic, something I don't think I've covered on the podcast yet, elevating community foundations. Now, we know that community foundations have long been the quiet force behind local philanthropy, but how can they step into the spotlight and inspire action on a national scale? So in this episode, I sit down with Peter Panepento, co-founder and managing partner at Turn 2 Communications, and Elyse Hammett, Vice President, Marketing and Communications at Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta, to discuss the groundbreaking Make More Possible campaign, which is an effort to create a true national brand for community foundations. So, Peter and Elyse, welcome to the podcast.
We're really excited
so glad to be here.
So, Peter, maybe you can start, and then Elyse, you can add to this, but can you share a bit about your background, how you became involved in nonprofit communications and philanthropy?
So I was a journalist for a long time and became involved in the nonprofit and philanthropy world when I worked for the Chronicle of Philanthropy during the back half of my journalism career. I started there as a reporter, covering fundraising and an array of topics, and ended up leading a lot of their first efforts into digital media, and then went into consulting. And as a big part of my consulting practice, which started out solo and now is part of an agency called Turn 2, really have developed a niche for working with philanthropic organizations to tell their stories, build their brands, and get attention for their work.
Fantastic. Elyse, how did you get started?
Classically trained marketing communications professional, worked for Emory Healthcare, was hired away from them to work for Big Bell South, was hired away from them to start and eventually sell a 30-person marketing communications firm. The Community Foundation was one of my clients. When I finished the sale of that business, I came to work for my client and have been here a decade now building this business. We've doubled our assets and doubled our giving in the 10 years I've been around.
Wow. Well, congratulations. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
That's amazing. So we know that community foundations, they often work behind the scenes. So let's talk about the Make More Possible campaign. Peter, maybe you can start. Why was it created? Why is it so important?
We started this actually under the umbrella of a group called the Community Foundation Awareness Initiative, which is a network of about 165 community foundations now. And as part of that work, I work closely with Elyse and her colleagues around the country, really trying to raise the profile of community foundations nationally, get their story told in the media, and have provide them with resources and how they can amplify that work in their local communities. And one of the biggest challenges we've heard time and again in our time doing this work, which now dates back 8 years, is that community foundations routinely are seen as the best kept secret in their community. They do fantastic work connecting donors to nonprofits and dealing with big issues in their communities. But unless you have a direct connection to the community foundation, you don't really know what it is, what it does, what it stands for, even having any kind of understanding of which community foundations operate in your community. We even did a person on the street interview, like kind of video interview series a few years ago as we were thinking through this effort, and met people on the street in communities across the country asking them, what's a community foundation and can they name their local community foundation? And to a person, they couldn't, nobody could answer the questions correctly. And I think Elyse and I, really, as we were building our partnership around the CFAI work, started having conversations about how the reason behind this is we don't really have a true national brand and a clear identity for what we do. And I know, Elyse, you've been beating the drum on this for a long time, so I'd love to hear your perspective.
Peter's spot on about that. And Julia, there's the hashtag that we see all the time now that is, if you know, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And
IYK. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That is ubiquitous for community foundations, because if you are a person who cares about your community, then across the 900 community foundations that are serving our country, those people are, if you know, you know. The issue is that we have to help make more possible in each and every one of those foundations. And the way to make more possible is to make it more accessible. It has heretofore been much too heavy, much too intellectual. It has the honey that has come to the pot has been of a much higher academic intellectual prowess. And we wanted to open the doors, open the welcome mat to people who could understand what giving back was all about, right? To the everyday philanthropist.
So, Elyse, what do you see as sort of the biggest myths and misconceptions that people have around community foundations, just like the regular person on the street? What do they not understand?
Right. So many people think that there are minimums, that there is a minimum fee or a minimum amount of a fund. And probably 85% of the community foundations out there, that just doesn't exist. You do have a fee that you have to pay to be a part of our community, just like you have a fee to hold a checking account at any bank in America. But it is a wonderful place to pay for that fee to get access to all of the resources that a community foundation has access to, especially within its hyper-local community. We have knowledge, for example, here in Atlanta, of approximately 4,500 nonprofits and what they are specifically doing to help our region thrive. I can tell you that the national competitors have absolutely no clue what those who those 4,500 nonprofits are, much less what those 4,500 nonprofits are doing.
So that local knowledge, I know here in Boston, and more specifically the North Shore where I live, nonprofits are often shocked to see that it's not just grants, it's actually professional development, connection to resources, help with grant writing or help with human resources, help with getting connected to other resources, help with collaboration and networking. It's so much more of a resource than handing out grants. So I think people are always really surprised to hear that.
Yeah. Julia, just this week, my CEO brought together about 50 small family foundation funders to talk about, what's happening as a result of the changes taking place in Washington, D.C., right? And how do we, as collaborators, can respond to the needs. And the way that I couch that as a marketer is that the community foundation is a world of knowledge close to home. Mm-hmm. Right? We're that world of knowledge that we may not have all the answers, but we're the trusted resource. We are the GPS that can help guide you through to ultimately make more possible.
I love that. Peter, do you want to add to that?
Sure. Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why it's important for community foundations to be out there telling the story and making themselves more accessible is that it provides on-ramps for donors who really care about making an impact locally to work with an organization that can help them make the most possible impact. But it also opens conversations and communications with nonprofits who may have thought that the community foundation was inaccessible to them or didn't know about some of the other things that you mentioned already, some of the capacity building and network building and even group problem solving that community foundations help foster in their communities. And even beyond that, getting local government, getting local businesses, getting others in the community who care about the community around the table to do this important work.
They have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in the community, and that's so important. So this campaign is a national branding initiative. It's called Make More Possible. Peter, can you tell me some of the elements of the campaign and how are you promoting it and where can we find it?
So this was really co-developed with a group of community foundations that decided to invest together in doing the work behind putting this campaign together. And we built it with the idea that we would develop a creative concept and campaign that would work both at the individual community level so that foundations like Elyse's can be using the collateral and materials as part of their local ad buy and their branding efforts in their community, using their own branding, their own examples, their own stories, but that it rolled up to a larger national message that reinforced that and amplified it at the national level so that over time there are multiple touch points with this. As you know, most people may or may not know, you need to be touched multiple times, 7, 8, 9 times by a message or a brand to really start to understand it and feel very comfortable with it. So the idea is that we were building this as both something that would reach people locally and that we would build it nationally. And we ultimately had a group of about 40 community foundations last year that co-invested in this effort. And by co-investing, they helped pay for focus group testing and the creative material development and a national ad buy. But they were also investing their talent and their time to help us shape this. So we worked very closely with Elyse and her colleagues over time to facilitate a process for developing developing not only the goals for this, but also our audience personas and the tactics we were going to use and ultimately help us shape the messaging, which we then focus group tested and really got feedback from our initial persona, which was individual donors. So we spent a good part of probably 9 months conceptualizing this whole thing, getting buy-in throughout the group, testing it, and then landing on the Make More Possible tagline and creative concept that we landed on. And then during the second half of 2024, we started launching it. Individual community foundations were, doing print, digital ad campaigns. In Nashville, they took out big billboards, and in other communities, they started doing things like including it as their annual report themes and at events and different things too. And then we augmented it with the resources we had left over at the end of last year with a test national ad buy that we really focused on in 4 markets to make sure that we were able to get good data back on it, but using national messaging about community foundations. And one of the exciting things about it is that engagement with these materials has been incredibly high.
Wow.
We're seeing click-through rates on the ads that are, many percentages and in some cases multiples more than what typically happens. People are watching the ads to the end. They're clicking through to the website. They're downloading resources we've put together. So we're really excited about the approach that we took is actually leading to real engagement in the outside world.
Elyse, how is the Greater Atlanta Community Foundation communicating these messages?
What we did was we were interested in truly seeing how to connect the passion with the purpose. We had some incredible testimonials, specifically in our scholarship business, where we had funders of scholarship, and then we had end user beneficiaries of scholarship. So we were able to storytell utilizing the photography of the funder of that scholarship and the beneficiary of the recipient, who had gone all the way through Spelman, for example, and now is going to medical school, or all the way through Georgia State and was now becoming a Navy SEAL. So we had some really interesting stories where passion met purpose to ultimately make a great life possible. And when you can storytell like that, Julia, people watch to the end.
It brings it to life and it puts it into context. So I was looking at the website and the Transforming Communities, the blog, which is all about specific stories on like the California Community Foundations and the Wildlife Recovery Funds and how community foundations are addressing the affordable housing crisis. And I think the storytelling piece is so impactful. So Peter, what were some maybe challenges or struggles or some wins that you had in collecting these stories from this wide array of community foundations?
Yeah, the wonderful thing about the network of community foundations we work with is every one of those foundations is incredibly generous with sharing examples and stories from their communities. Our biggest challenge is having the bandwidth to tell all of them. So the Transforming Communities website, which is the main website for CFAI, we've really endeavored to try to tell stories about the work that's happening at the community level. Some of those are around disaster response and relief. Some of those are around individual programs and efforts that are happening around housing and education and various issues. We're about to tell a story about an effort to advance religious pluralism at individual community foundations through a partnership with the WF Fund, which Elyse's foundation is part of. That's not specifically part of this ad campaign, but that storytelling is really, really important for the field. And that's been a big part of our work over the past several years, is really trying to uplift and elevate stories of the impact that community foundations are having and trying to tie that to a broader national understanding of the value and the impact of this work. So we're continuing to look at ways to do that. And as the ad campaign evolves, we'll be doing a lot more of that over time too.
And Elyse, I would imagine for your foundation, it's really important to collect and share those stories of the 4,500 nonprofits on the ground. Do you find that nonprofits are willing to share their stories, or are they struggling? Where are you finding the most impactful storytelling in your community?
It can be vastly different. We have nonprofits that are 2 people big. And obviously, they're doing so much, the 2 of them, that telling their stories is stifled. But we also have mid-size nonprofits that may have 50 employees, where garnering the story and telling the story of what that nonprofit is doing is illustrative of the work. So it all comes down to how we can be innovative to champion the unique idea of a nonprofit, and then how we can help them declare that story as their ally and their advocate, to dispense it in all of our shared, earned, and owned channels.
Yeah, there's even there's even a layer below that, which is honoring the story of the individuals who are impacted. One of the things that community foundations specifically are being very deliberate about now is making sure that they are telling those stories through their channels in a way that's not extractive. And that is really making sure that they are acting as ethically as possible in terms of making sure that the stories of the individuals who are impacted are being told in the most elevating and empowering way possible. A lot of traditional storytelling is very extractive, right? A person comes in, they do an interview, they tell the story and they move on. But that story they're telling is often a story of struggle or trauma or something that carries a lot of emotion for that person. So making sure that you are approaching that in a way that really makes that person an equal partner in telling that story, rather than it being kind of a top-down thing, is something that is a bit of a trend in the field of philanthropy and is something that, needs to continue to be reinforced and thought about.
I completely agree. So in this branding campaign, I'm wondering, just with the current climate, that it appears like the third sector is under attack from all angles, whether it be funding or agencies being shut down or IRS rules. What is the role of the community foundation in advocating for nonprofits? And Elyse, I'd be interested to know what you think.
I think we're still trying to figure that out.
This is a time when we're talking to a lot of community foundations around this. I think given the pace at which things are happening and how jarring it is, community foundations are right now really trying to figure out how they can be the best resource to their communities during this time, figuring out what their best role is, how they can best support nonprofits, and how they can best bring donors together to meet the needs that are emerging right now. And
convening. I know, Elyse,
yes.
You said you were convening family foundations to see what's going on.
Just to talk, right? To be the trusted place where people can come together.
Exactly. I think that's a great goal. Another question I have is, I know the campaign is primarily to encourage people that are unaware of community foundations, maybe donors, lay people in the community, to participate. But if my audience is predominantly nonprofit marketers and fundraisers and executive directors, if they want to connect with their community foundation, what is like the first step that they should take?
What I would do is I would Google community foundation and then the city that they live in or the county that they live in and find one, because there are 900 plus around the country. There's got to be one within stretching distance. That community foundation should have a website and a mechanism whereby they can connect. For us here in Atlanta, we have a place where all the nonprofits can fill out a very simple one-page form that gets them into our Rolodex system and that signs them up to receive our regular newsletters that lets nonprofit know about grants they can apply for and what's coming up about educational opportunities, etc.
Okay. So Google and reach out, and there's probably events going on.
All kinds of a plethora of things is constantly going on. But the way to do that first is to sign up and to get the access to the newsletter in my community.
I think I always recommend that to my clients, or I recommend that to nonprofits, even if they're just starting out. Get connected to the resources in your community. I think people tend to think, oh, let's join the Chamber of Commerce, which, not to knock the Chamber of Commerce. I think it's a fabulous resource. But where are the nonprofit and charity specific and sort of philanthropy specific resources in the community that you can look at?
Yes. Those anchor institutions.
And then you will also be a part of a community where if you need a partner for something, or if you need a resource for something, or if you're looking to collaborate on a particular issue or an event or something in your community, then you can find other organizations. I used to work with startup nonprofits a lot. And people would always come to me and say, I want to start a nonprofit. And I would say, well, what is already existing? And I think a community foundation is a fantastic resource to see what's already going on in your community rather than reinventing the wheel.
Agreed.
Right? So what are the next steps for the Make More Possible campaign. And Peter, maybe you can talk about the timeline, maybe what are some hopes of success, like what are some results that you're hoping to see and what are next steps?
Sure. So we are moving forward with carrying the work that we did in 2024 into 2025 and beyond. So we set up the campaign initially as a test that would run in 2024. But the community foundations that participated in it, as well as a new crop of community foundations that are investing in the next phase, are now carrying the campaign forward in their communities this year. We have right now, I think, a total of 50 community foundations between those two groups that have access to all the materials, many of which are running active advertising campaigns this year. We are also, as that is happening, working on an extension of the campaign to reach another very important audience for community foundations. And that is an audience that we call the professional advisor audience, which is estate attorneys, financial planners, others that serve as connectors between donors and community foundations as their clients are making plans for their philanthropy. So we're developing ways to extend the campaign to reach that audience this year. And our hope is that over time, we will continue to add new community foundations to the effort, but also add new audiences and then revisit some of our initial audiences, which have been largely focused around donors, to continue to refresh and update the messaging there. Ultimately, this is something we would like to see as an ongoing national campaign that we can both be doing national advertising and branding, kind of at that high level, but that individual community foundations of all sizes throughout the country are gaining access to these resources and being able to amplify it in their local communities. And we've had a lot of really small community foundations who've invested a couple of $1,000s in this, and they're getting an entire branding campaign, something that they couldn't afford probably on their own, but they're getting all of these materials that they can use to really help tell their story and reach new people in their communities. And we want to try to make that accessible to a much larger group over time.
I think that's fantastic. And are there ways that nonprofits, if you're not a community foundation, that we can sort of uplift this message and amplify the campaign?
I think in cases where they are in a community where the campaign is underway, it's very easy to amplify some of the social media messaging and other things that are out there. We also use the hashtag Make More Possible. So there's a lot of material that is circulating around organizations and individuals can access and plug into. On top of that, I think there's a real opportunity for other causes to come together in a similar way and think about how they can collectively brand their work in ways that can raise attention and understanding of the issues that they work on. We did this around community foundations, but imagine if all of the organizations that are addressing affordable housing or food insecurity or specific types of education actually came together and tried to co-invest in building awareness around their issue or building branding around their work. And so more people will support the work that they're doing. I think there are real opportunities there, especially with so many small organizations that are trying to tackle different parts of these problems.
That's fantastic. And Elyse, I know you're a marketing and communications expert. You just have such a renowned bio. You've worked on so many campaigns. So I wonder, what is your biggest piece of advice for all of those nonprofits out there that think they are the best kept secret? How can they get more visibility?
I would encourage them to find one tagline and keep that tagline. Say it over and over again. The research has shown us that in our post-pandemic environment, it takes 9 times now to cut through the clutter for anyone to actually assimilate that a tagline is attached to a brand, just to assimilate that it is attached to a brand. So if we want to make more possible and connect those 3 words to a community foundation, we've got to hear it thousands of times before it connects. Think about how many times you had to hear open happiness before it occurred to you that that was aligned with the Coca-Cola company.
Mm-hmm.
So stick with it, stay the course, put it everywhere. I promise that ubiquitous reinforcement can drive the value proposition.
That's fantastic. So where can people learn more about the Make More Possible campaign, sign up, get resource kits, and learn more about you, Peter? I think you should start, and then Elyse, you can go ahead if you want people to connect with you online.
Sure. So you can access the Make More Possible campaign online at makemorepossible.org. That's housed on the CFAI website, but we really branded that area specifically for this campaign. And you can find me and the work that I do at turn-2two.co. That's where you can get the resources that we provide on communications, branding, and PR for social good organizations.
Awesome. Elyse, where can people find you and learn more about the foundation?
You know what? Here's what we need to do. I'm Elyse Hammett. I'm the only Elyse Hammett on LinkedIn, so that's where you should go find me. But I want to reinforce what Peter said. Go to makemorepossible.org. That is the place to go and be and find this wonderful work. Makemorepossible.org. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. Good luck with the campaign. I can't wait to see more about it. I'm actually going to introduce it to my community foundations in my community. They might be a part of it, but I haven't heard of it. So the best kept secret. So I'm going to introduce it. I really believe in the strength of local philanthropy and giving locally and participating locally and elevating communities from the ground up. So I believe in the work so much. So thank you both so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Julia. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this with this audience.
Well, hey there. I wanted to say thank you for tuning into my show and for listening all the way to the end. If you really enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, and you'll get new episodes downloaded as soon as they come out. I would love if you left me a rating or a review, because this tells other people that my podcast is worth listening to. And then me and my guests can reach even more earbuds and create even more impact. So that's pretty much it. I'll be back soon with a brand new episode. But until then, you can find me on Instagram at JuliaCampbell77. Keep changing the world, you nonprofit unicorn.